I saw your activity with your company in the last 10 years. You seem to follow the most generous governments in this evolution from one country to another country, where the subsidy scheme was more generous and it really encouraged the industry. You also spoke about this service you offer, protection of investors in face of governments that apply retroactive measures. Can you please give us more details about this? How does it work, this protection?
So, well, first of all, this following the most generous governments is actually not true, because we picked Australia after the experience in the Czech Republic exactly for that. I mean, among other things, but we really specifically were looking for a jurisdiction where we're talking 2011, where solar, from our point of view, was very close to becoming competitive. So, and we wanted to go to a stable jurisdiction. So back then we thought either California or Australia. Because Michael grew up in Australia, the choice was obvious. But it was actually driven by exactly the opposite. But coming to the main part of the question, so as I mentioned before, we're really the Czech Republic was first hit. It was 50 megawatts. We, are, I would say, mid-sized investor in the Czech Republic. Quite early on, basically a group of investors came together in the Czech Republic. We formed we organized ourselves in an organization called IPVIC, which stands for International Photovoltaic Investors Club. But basically what we did is we coordinated our steps with a view of jointly suing the government with all this, so finding the right advisors. And that platform actually has now been very successful. It has taken 7 years. I mean, we actually dropped out because at the time, and this was our fundamental mistake at the very beginning, at the time of the announcement of the original measures, just, if you don't know the details, it was a 26% tax on levy, called the levy, or the tax, on revenues. So for the first 3 years after we connected, we had to, they basically, we didn't even send it to us, they took just 26%. And what was really nasty was that they announced it at the time when we were still building, so in October 2010, we were still busy building. Us and other investors hadn't closed their bank financing yet, so the bank actually came back after we had bought, after the point of no return. We bought the projects, the modules were on their way, and they told us this. So the banks came back and said, look, 2080, that was yesterday. So now we'll give you 40, how about 45? 55? So basically within 2 months to go, we had to come up with more than double the equity on an asset that would, at least for the first 3 years, generate a lot less. Then the banks said, look, we don't believe it's only going to be 3 years, then we should extend it. So they were partially right on that. So it got so they reintroduced the levy then for the rest of the feed-in tariff at 10%. So this really hurts. Yeah? So if you see any gray hair, it dates back to that time. And I mean, it's a very personal thing, when you build up a company, you have 50 employees, and just out of thin air, they basically pretty much almost destroy you. So we participated in this. Unfortunately, at the time, we were still a Czech company. So we didn't have access to any international treaties. At the end of the year, we were already planning a Dutch holding. We accelerated it, but it was simply after the announcement of those measures. So we became a Dutch company at the end of 2010. Then in the preparation, we realized it doesn't make sense to proceed because they would kick us out very early in the arbitration. But basically, it was a very strong motivation to say never again. Yeah. So we set up, as I mentioned, a subsidiary. We hired, an industry-leading expert. We remained involved with the IPVC, so all the other investors went ahead. And actually, one of the investors at the end of last year, or I think it was announced in January, they actually won on merits against the Czech Republic. So they're still waiting for the Czech Republic challenged it in Swiss court, because the arbitration was in Geneva, so they went to Swiss courts. So the challenge is probably zero chance. So then we will be waiting for the damages, for the so-called quantum. So as we watched this, we were very closely involved, and what we Also seeing what happened in Spain, you know, where a lot of investors, and there we had 3 rounds of retractive measures. A lot of the investors actually lost their investments completely. So many of them sued, didn't succeed, and actually then they were not even able to access the European Court of Justice because the system is set up in such a way that the High Court of the country has to actually refer the case. If they don't do it, you're stuck in your home country. So a few thousand Spanish investors made that experience. So, and as we got involved more and more also through the Czech Soda Association, I mean, to cut a long story short, the sad reality today is that investment protection doesn't exist in Europe. I mean, and over the years we've also met a few officials in Brussels who are even those that are actively dismantling any kind of investment protection that's left. So, for example, bilateral investment treaties, which have been a mainstay of international law, between EU member states, the EU Commission considers, and unfortunately there's a ruling by the European Court of Justice which says it's against EU law. So basically it will not be usable. Here in Romania you actually have a famous case, the Mikula case, which you've probably heard about. There's also an issue of state aid, so whenever, it's actually very absurd when you go to Brussels, whenever there's state aid involved, and the EU Commission, even after the fact, has come to the conclusion that all these support mechanisms are actually state aid. According to EU law, you don't have any legitimate expectations. So basically, if you invest based on a support scheme of any kind, it's not only solar or anything, basically you have to rationally expect that they can switch you off the very next day, irrespective of how much you have invested and so on. This is the reality of investment today. So basically, this is the only solution, and the important thing is that gives you a right to fight back. You know, we're talking about having at least access to continued access to international arbitration, whether it's based on a bilateral investment treaty, or in the case of the energy sector, based on the Energy Charter Treaty, you have to invest from outside the EU. So what we've done, or what we're constantly reviewing, is trying to do is find the right jurisdictions from which to invest into a target country. So again, to cut a long story short, the best solution for Romania, but actually most of the new member countries of the EU that joined in the last 10-15 years, is Switzerland, because it's outside the EU. You have BITs that are national investment treaties that are still in force, that will not be affected by the
to have your business incorporated in Switzerland?
Invest into, let's say, Romania. I mean, this is what we're doing now.
To invest in Switzerland?
You invest from Switzerland. So for example, now, in the case of Hungary, where, I mean, now everything looks fine, but, yeah, of course. I mean, there, every Hungarian knows that they call them the royal family, so rich family. They are investing. So this is actually very interesting to see how a lot of I mean, as you've seen, we have developed in many countries, and we expected it to be complicated, and very often it's complicated. In Hungary, they just clean the path for the rest. It's unbelievable. Yeah? So now changing the zoning of land takes 8 days. You know, so it's all nice now, but you never know. And I mean, there's history in Hungary in a few sectors. So basically, we've set up a subsidiary in Switzerland, through which we make all the investments and developments.
Thank you for explaining.